the future of solar. So Danny Kennedy, welcome to Vator.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is this the clicker? Great. Thank you very much for that introduction. And it's a hard act to follow. Gary Rogers, ladies and gentlemen. I could sit here all afternoon and learn lessons from this man. It's a great privilege to be here to talk about the future of solar. I'm going to give you a potted tour and try and keep it briefer than the allotted time so you can also ask me questions and maybe get into a conversation. But before I do, firstly I want to acknowledge I'm here sort of as the co-founder of Sungevity, and really all that good money raising and stuff is the team, the CEO, Andrew Birch, the chairman, who's from Oakland, Rob Davenport might even be in the crowd, from Bright Path Capital. And the big news that was mentioned before was that in March we closed a $72 million round for Sungevity to basically go global and take our unique software technology-based Sunshine Online business to the world, which is exciting times. Oakland's at the heart of the future of solar. And I also want to welcome you as you arrive here. I know you've heard a lot about Oakland, but particularly to Jack London Square, because it really is the epicenter of the future of solar, which we're going to get into in a second. But just above our heads, not only is Sungevity's sort of back office, about 150 people over that side of the third floor, we've got another 300 or so in the neighboring building, so this is truly our campus, if you will. But directly above is the Fun Cube, which is the incubator that I helped start with a couple of other partners, and is going great. We've got about a dozen companies in there, all working to progress solar for universal need, is what we call it. The need for spreading of solar around the world, which I'll talk to in a moment, and try and get you involved in some of these companies in the accelerator. But they're upstairs here, have made Oakland their home, are really the epicenter of that thing called fun. And so you're really at the heart of it, and welcome to our homes. Privileged to have Vator here, bringing all this great talent and genius and hopefully money and other things to bear in our market. So to go to the future of solar, the topic of my talk, I wanted to just recalibrate you before you sort of set your minds about, ooh, solar, that's that stuff the lady with cats did up the street back in the 70s kind of stuff. It's actually a $100 billion business growing at about 30% CAGR through the Great Recession. We did 400% growth just here in the United States since 2010 as an industry. So we're prime time, big money. Buffett is the biggest owner of our solar farms in this country. Blackstone's the owner of one of our biggest competitors. We're the shizzle, as they say. But more importantly, for all of you in the tech sector and Silicon Valley, we're it as evidenced by this thing that I was reminded of when I was preparing for this, which was a joke from a couple of years ago on the internets. And I don't know why that's going backwards. It's a text-based conversation. You can probably date it with the OS for text conversations like this. But you have Wikipedia saying, I know everything. And Google saying, well, I have everything in my archives. You'd probably add NSA these days to that one. You have Facebook saying, I know everybody. And the internet saying, without me, you all are nothing. And electricity at the bottom saying, keep talking, bitches. Sorry for the swear word, but you understand the point. We're the network of networks in this networked society. There is nothing in the economy today that is growing well that is not based on electricity. And the future of solar is the market we now know as electricity. The disruption that is coming is not just the disruption that went into telephony through a semiconductor silicon chip, but it is the disruption of the market known as electricity, the biggest market, the Uber network. And I'm not talking about a small car sharing company. I'm talking about electricity. About 80% of GDP value is based on electricity. All the companies here are nothing without electricity. And not only are we disrupting that, we're going to take transport too, because it makes sense. Transport is dependent on a thing called the internal combustion engine, and it's going the way of the dodo as well. That is the future of solar, ladies and gentlemen. So to get to it, I just want to remind you how we actually create electricity in this day and age. And I'm going to try not to go back to the start every time I put a slide up. We make it in a really ugly and complex way. It's all solar energy, just to be clear. Electric power is all solar energy. It's just that most of it today comes from 200 million years ago. Sunlight fell on the earth, plants took it up, turned it into carbohydrates, died, became coal, oil, and gas, and along we come and dig it up to burn it. A very ugly, stupid, dangerous process. We then boil water with it, which is sort of like, oh my God, that is so inefficient. We boil water to drive a machine that was invented about 200 years ago and really hasn't changed, called the steam turbine. Hasn't been exposed to much competition, and therefore we kind of just run it like we used to run it in the 1800s. We burn stuff and boil water to drive steam turbines. That's about 70% of electricity, which is about 80% of economic value on Earth today. That does not meet Steve Jobs' requirements for simple elegance. This is an ugly solution. It's got death at every step in the chain. It is death. Coal is dead plants, dead sunlight. Along comes, going back once and then forward, along comes an American invention, 1954, just 60 years ago last month, the photovoltaic, a solar panel. The solar cell was invented by a Frenchman a few decades before that, but the solar panel, Bell Labs, April 1954. Similar machine produces electricity from sunlight direct, cuts out all the middlemen. You put it at the point of use, you shine sun on it, and electrons drop out the backside. 15% of photons falling on that puppy become electrons. Compare that to the efficiency of burning fossil fuels from 200 million years ago, or boiling water. The efficiency is a significant factor different. So this is the machine, the photovoltaic, the solar panel, which is at the heart of the future. And this machine is going to take on the world. And when I say that, it's not an all-of-the-above energy strategy in America. It's a winner-take-all. This is the word processor to the typewriter. This is the automobile to the horse. We're going to, in a century, look back and go, what were we doing digging up dead plants and boiling water? It's going to replace the way we get electricity in time for a couple of reasons. One of them is cultural, and I'm going to go forward now. People like sunlight. It's okay. The one on the right, that would be it. Should have tried that. Sorry. So, people like sunlight. It is associated with health and well-being through all culture, through all time. People love the sun, right? You know, it's the highest Irish blessing is to have sun on your face. We want it, and whenever there's pushback or orchestrated campaigns and propaganda to say Solyndra, 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 or whatever it is, the American public come back and say, no, we want that. We believe that that is the future. And whether you're red or blue or black or white or whatever, solar is your pick, and your persistent optimism about this American invention spreading and becoming ubiquitous continues. Better than that, pressing the right clicker, is the fact that we create jobs. A lot of jobs. Density of jobs is an important economic consideration and a political consideration into the 21st century. Jobs are at a premium in our society. Coal is capital intensive. Oil and gas offshore are capital intensive. We have 3 to 4 times as many people per unit of energy in the solar industry. That's an incredible statement. We've already got 144,000 people in our business, and we're producing 1% of electricity. There are only 80,000 coal miners in America. They produce about 40% of electricity. We have more people working in the solar industry today than there are ranchers in Texas, or actors in California, There are more people in solar industry in America than the US steel industry. Jobs is one of the reasons you will see this continue to be held up, because that is what is needed in the 21st century. But the most important reason that we're going to succeed and the solar ascent is going to continue, this S-curve of mass adoption, which we're just at the very bottom of, is economics. It's a good old function of cost. And we are the low-cost provider of the thing called electricity. This is a graph that shows 100 years of fossil fuel prices, real numbers, what you used to pay at the plug going forward to about now. It's a range, because we all know we pay different rates for electricity, but you'll note that it goes up through time. Fossil fuel electricity goes up because it's governed by an economic rule called scarcity. Fossil fuels are finite. As you use more of them, they become more expensive. Also, the space to pollute becomes finite. We start imposing cost on that. And the water that we boil with the fossil fuels is actually pretty scarce too when you think about California these days. So we charge more for those things. It goes up in price. Solar electricity, on the other hand, comes down in price. Since it emerged 50 years into this timeline, it has fallen by 18% for every doubling of volume in the manufacture of the product. 18% learning curve. It's a phenomenon you've all seen before. You're very familiar with it. It's innate. You may not even recognize the pattern, but this is the silicon-based semiconductor you know as the chip, we know as the cell. Every doubling of volume it comes down, and in about 2005, the Chinese decided to start making it. And they made lots of it, and it fell 70% in the last 5 years. And it will only continue to fall. And what happens when that happens? You tell me, but I think the low-cost producer of the thing wins. That is the future of solar. We are the shizzle, as I said earlier. And it's a pretty exciting future, but you may think this is all general and blah, blah, and don't believe me. So I'm going to show you some real numbers from an analyst called Sanford Bernstein. You probably know them in New York, conservative Wall Street guys, kind of freaking out. Look at the title on this deck from last month, Welcome to the Terror Dome. So the curve coming in from the top of the page in 2006-ish is solar price per dollars per BTU, British thermal units. It's plummeting, as you can see. And the other prices are those of the coal, gas, and oil markets in the Asian region. And Asia is where electricity is at play. And they've trickled up over 50 years. They're going up. And solar in 2012 intercepted them and is cutting straight through them. And that is the terror dome. For an investor, that is frightening. There is so much wealth that has been built under those little dribbles of value creation over those last 50 years. There is so much sunk cost still to be repaid. There is so much investment in those curves. And they're feeling like Rupert Murdoch in 1999 with the internets. They're feeling like the recording industry executives that didn't like Napster. They're going, holy crap, this distributed architecture, silicon semiconductor industry is coming not just to eat my lunch, but to have my family. That is the terror dome for investors on this earth. Last night, Stanford voted to divest from coal. The endowment of Stanford is no longer invested in coal as of a few months from now. You know what Stanford does a lot of? Solar startups, solar technology, sun power. These are the companies that have come out of Stanford. The smart money, remember the words, Stanford, Buffett, don't believe me. The places that people are going are solar, not the past. So it's a pretty exciting time, but just to really reinforce the point and now to bring you into the conversation, think about your own experience in the information communication technology industry. It's been very similar. We started off with computers back in the 50s and 40s. Computers were actually a room full of people crunching numbers on spreadsheets, paper, and abacuses. I shit you not. Computers were the word for the room full of people. And then we made a machine that could do that, to crunch the ones and zeros, do the numbers. And that machine we miniaturized and mass-produced and put into all sorts of applications that the inventors of it never imagined. And they put it into glasses and cars and fridges, and everything became smart and enabled. And that ICT revolution and the intelligence that it brings to our networked lifestyles is what we are all enjoying and building apps for. That curve you've lived, that ride, and the destruction of the abacus-based accounting businesses is something we no longer lament. That's the future, that's the opportunity, that is the universe that is opening, which is the future of solar. So, what's it going to look like? That's sort of what is implicit in the topic, the future of solar. To be honest, I don't know. I know it's going to be a lot like what Sungevity does. Great branded business that serves up solar electricity easily and makes it simple. We've done a lot of work on the internet to make it as pleasant as possible with software that allows us to do the design and engineering phase without going to the home and reduce the cost of the truck roll while improving the experience of the customer. We've financed it with clever creative financing options like a solar lease, which has helped make it easier for mass adoption. But it's just the beginning. We're, you know, as an industry, the solar leasing business is doing tens of thousands of units. We've done maybe 600,000 homes in America as a business, and yet we're multi-billion-dollar markets, right? There are 40 million homes to address with this. So how many more business models, how many more ingenious approaches to selling and making solar simple and pleasant and maybe even sexy and fun for consumers will there be? There's lots of opportunity to create things. There's all sorts of crazy stuff that flows from the nature of solar that's hard to explain, but I think will really captivate the entrepreneurs and the software engineers in the room. It's a distributed architecture. It's modular. You can put it at the point of use and not have distribution and transmission ties and links needed. So for example, here's one of my favorite future of solar images, a trash can. You see them all uptown on Broadway and all around Oakland. It's a solar-powered trash can. Who knew you needed to make a solar-powered trash can? I didn't. These guys are geniuses. They compact the trash with the solar power so it can take 5 times as much garbage as a conventional can, and then they call the guy to come pick it up when it's full. It's got a GSM packet on board, and it saves the city of Oakland tens of thousands of dollars a month because it's smart and enabled and powered with solar. How many more brilliant ideas are there like that to be done now that we have electricity wherever we want it, where sunlight falls on it? I think there's lots. There's things like this, tuk-tuks in Asia going solar. And as I mentioned a moment ago, electricity is interesting in the States. It's a big business, and we're going to rewire it with this technology, but it's also sort of flattening in demand, except for the above-the-waist load of your gadgets and iPads and stuff. But in Asia, there's 500 million people in India that don't even have it. There's hundreds of millions in China that have unreliable and dirty electricity. There's the 700 million people from the Philippines to Indonesia that have shitty diesel-based electricity if they've got it at all. They're all going to get electricity from this technology. The Chinese, you may not know this, have started switching out by mandate the two-stroke putt-putt motorcycles that they drive around with electric motor motorcycles. Transport is going to be electric. My Fiat 500e is a better ride than the Fiat 500. It's a preferable way to get solar power, to get power to move and mobility, that service, and it costs me nothing because I got a solar system on my house that produces a surplus of electricity, and I charge it up by day. This is one of the futures. What else? We can bring Wi-Fi to the world that doesn't have it, which is still most of the world. This is Google's Loon project. I don't know if you've heard about it, but they're flying balloons to bring Wi-Fi to remote areas. And the solar power is in the controls and the actual broadband broadcast, which comes out of the thing hanging from the basket. Just last month, Facebook bought their own version of this, a company called Acenta, which has a drone, which is solar powered and flies at very high altitude for days and days and days, and broadcasts Wi-Fi into remote areas. And I got to say, I think Zuck beat Larry and Sergey on the cool toys, don't you? Much sweeter. But as I say, I don't know what the future holds for where solar power goes, but it's going to go everywhere, and it's going to be really meaningful and important, like bringing the internet to masses of people that don't currently enjoy it and don't currently engage in all the businesses represented in this hall. Which brings me to one of the companies that started just above our head called PowerHive, which is one of our startups in the space. Ooh, the animation's not working. PowerHive is basically bringing electricity to Kenyan villages through a cloud-based software that connects to intelligent hardware on the ground in the community. Think a big solar array in the middle of a village, which is a broad footprint geography, and then they string wires out to houses to wire them up to have electricity for the first time. These are families that have maybe never seen electricity, certainly have never had the option. They use kerosene at night for light if they're lucky, and as you know, kerosene is one of the biggest killers of children in this world with indoor air pollution, big contributor to climate change, and a huge cost burden on countries that subsidize it. These guys are displacing kerosene for less, because when these families sign up for a PowerHive contract, they'll pay less in Kenyan shillings than they were for a kerosene budget. So PowerHive is doing this incredible work, taking it out, pay-as-you-go, solar electricity to villages in Africa. But right now, one of the things I wanted to say to you all is they can't find a full-stack Python or Django programmer because all the good brains are getting sucked up by the next app for car sharing or whatever it might be. And they've got, good offers on the table and equity in a fast-growth business that is going to change the world, change this kid's life. This is a school that has had a light installed for the first time and now is getting computers because of PowerHive bringing electricity to these villages. And they need someone to help them build the next version of their software. Steve Kraft's actually in the audience, their head of engineering. If anyone wants a cool job, go see the man afterwards, please. And same with Sungevity. We've got a table outside. We've got 6 open software recs right now changing the next generation of home solar management. We need software genius applied to our business and our businesses. And I want to inveigle you to think about the solar space as the most exciting place to work. It is the new shit. to use a term of art from Silicon Valley. We're doing something that is cool. If you don't think these photos I've shown you are cool, except for the trash can maybe, then I don't understand you. But it's also important. We're building an electricity system that can take the world forward, can provide electricity to 1.5 billion, that's with a B, people that don't have what we take for granted, and can save us all money on our energy cost because we don't have a fuel input that goes up in price. That is pretty cool work. It's also feeding a construction business that is replete with jobs, which is important for our society, but it's really, really interesting stuff. It's the dance of electrons that's going to happen with this sunshine mesh, as I call it. We're going to have distributed generating resources all around the world. Every roof, the skin of every building is going to be producing some electricity, some wind turbines and other stuff thrown in. There's going to be storage. We're going to have to manage the load and make sure if demand pops up, we can turn it down in demand response tools. And the integration and that choreography of that dance, the balance of this with the internet and the information communication technologies that make it possible is the work of the next 20 years, I would say. There's a lot of great hardware. The solar panel's pretty much bomb-proof, literally, and when sunlight falls on it, it produces electricity. What we need now is you to get involved in this game, to take it to that future and all those opportunities, and wherever you will take it. Just as I didn't know about Facebook 10 years ago, because nor did you, because they hadn't come up with it, or Google 15 years ago, I don't know what the companies in the future of solar will do. But with that cost curve and this dynamic and this need, this fundamental need for electricity on Earth that does not cook the planet, I think it's going to be a huge opportunity. So why should you get involved in this fund? Well, for investors, it's a target-rich environment. You're going to make bank. If you want deals that have 15+% IRRs for project finance, if you want corporate equity possibilities, we've got them upstairs by the dozen, literally. If you're an entrepreneur or an engineer, I really encourage you to think about this as the place to work and to put your effort. For the next decade, you will find no more fulfilling, enriching, and rewarding work, socially and financially, than this. We need solar entrepreneurs now. Why should you? You've got to ask me that. Why? As Gary says, why? Once we get you, we trust you. Why do we want your optimism and persistence applied to this place? That answer is in the palm of your hand. I know you've all been tweeting and looking at your phones while I was talking. Take them out. Take out your phones. Come on. There's an app on that phone. You've all got one. And somewhere in the app, come on, I'd like to see someone do what I'm saying. Please take out your phones. You got a photo gallery? Anyone got a photo gallery? I'm sure you've got a photo gallery. There's a picture of a child you love, a kid you care about. I'm not saying this facetiously. Find that photo. Find your niece, your nephew, your son, your daughter, the person you mentor at Girls Code or Junior Achievement. Look at that kid. That's why you should do this. This is my kids. Strangely, my wife sent me this photo with one of those frigging Instagram things. I still do not understand why that app was worth so many billions of dollars. It just ruins good photos. But these are why I do this. The future is going solar. You need to get on board. Thank you very much.
So I understand that the manufacturing costs and production costs, per megawatt hour, what it is, have gone down with solar, but I hear a lot of the negative pundits saying that we'd have to cover half the landmass of the United States and our cars head to toe in solar panels and put photovoltaic paint on our houses in order to generate that same amount of electricity that we use, not to mention data centers like what Facebook and Google and Microsoft and Amazon have set up. So are those same levels of efficiency and technology being realized in the future so that such drastic measures won't be necessary that'll take hundreds of years?
Firstly, I think it's a false premise. Pundits that say that are full of bullshit. It doesn't take that much space. It takes a lot less space than fossil fuels, about 1/10 of the space to provide the energy requirement that we currently have. And if you think about it, we have the so the real estate that we should deploy this on, because it can be done distributed and not over land masses, is directly above our heads. We add value to it, we weatherize it, and we get the electricity right at the point of use. There has been a lot of that punditry, and it's simply false. Like, we can do this with current technologies. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt peddled about solar now that it's coming, and one of the tricks is, oh, you got to wait for the next generation, you got to wait for storage, or you got to wait for something else. That's not true. We've got a really amazing machine. It kills all the other things, the steam turbine, and they just don't want competition. So, you know, we've just got to come up with the creative ways. And to your question about the cost structure stack, the module and other power electronics and balance of system cost of goods is coming down amazingly. What we need to squeeze now is cost of sales, cost of finance. Cost of sales is largely a software solution. Cost of finance is a data analytics solution. Some of the companies upstairs are treating these things exactly because the financiers aren't yet comfortable with the asset class. But once they realize, oh wow, this is a machine that will work for 50 years, not the 25-year warranted life, and produce a valuable commodity like electricity, and no inputs, no moving parts, they're going to get behind it. So we need software solutions to that part of the stack.
Hi, you talked about solar being a low to no carbon alternative to fossil fuels. Can you mention a little bit the life cycle of production of solar and what goes into that, and what efforts are being made to reduce fossil fuel inputs in the production?
Sure. So, you know, you're sort of talking about energy output returned on energy invested, and these days solar panels are coming down to something like a 2-year payback. They used to be like 5 to 10, but because of the volume production, and also because of things like breeder plants, where some of the Chinese manufacturers are actually using photovoltaics to feed their manufacturing facilities for the silicon smelting and all the energy intensive pieces of it. But also, one thing to remember is that calculus is all based on a 25-year lifetime for this machine, which is really just this economic construct we have called a warranty. And what's weird about solar machines is there's no reason they stop working in year 26. And in fact, they'll probably work in year 56 and maybe year 86. They degrade to a certain point, then they sort of plateau. And I've seen a system that was installed in 66 at the Jet Propulsion Lab working at 86% of its rated capacity today. So the paybacks are fantastic. We can clean them up. They are recyclable. One of the interesting things about the commodity components is they're aluminium, glass, silicon, largely, some backsheet that needs to be split out if you want to recycle them. And there's all sorts of rules, and we're involved as Sungevity in conversations about, you know, how to ensure take back and all those good policies. But I mean, I'm a Greenpeace guy by background, 20 years doing that stuff, and I have no qualms with this machine. Like, it's not pure play, but it's about as close to pure play as you can imagine. And when you compare it, I mean, back to the former question, you know, we get claims of, it's going to take too much land space in Nevada. Have you ever seen the tar sands? Have you ever gone to Wyoming and seen a coal mine and how much land they destroyed for fossil fuels? The life cycle footprint on solar panels is pretty amazing.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.